Welcome back to Retreat on the Hill. This is the VIP living room edition. And since you're all already laying down, we'll start laying down. So because I'm recording this, I'll say for the sake of the recording what I said to you earlier, which is this lesson will be whatever it is to you, but what it was to me is low back pain management, which had gotten pretty severe when I was traveling. So if you're listening to this and you're new to the Feldenkrais method, then make sure to take your time. Listen to the instructions when you can. If you get bored or you check out, let yourself rest, come back to it when you feel refreshed. What we're doing here is a very unique kind of learning, sensory motor learning. And that's not something that you do with your cognition. That's something that you do by paying attention to your sensation. So if you've done Feldenkrais before, like you guys here, this is sensory motor learning. And so no matter what the instructions are, the name of the game here is to have a little bit of time with yourself, slowing down, listening, observing what comes up. Don't force yourself. Nothing should be painful or uncomfortable. And take plenty of rests. So to begin, notice the way that you're laying on the floor. If I didn't make it clear before, if you're not already, then lay down on your back on the floor, have your legs long, have your arms by your sides. If already that's not a good thing for your back, then keep your knees bent, your feet standing. And see, what do you notice about yourself right now? What do you notice about the way that you're breathing? What do you notice about the activity of your mind, your kind of thinking? Do you have a lot of chatter happening? Do you have one thing particular? Or do you find that you're kind of making space in your mind? And now notice what the back of your hips, your pelvis, feels like. And start to refine your sensing in that area. See if you can start to tell a difference between the left and the right side. And maybe one side is heavier or lighter, but also maybe there's more specific differences. Maybe one side is a little bit more flat. One side's a little bit more pokey. So start to listen for those kinds of things that seem pretty subtle. Try not to come up with a conclusion. Try to just observe. And see what kind of shape do you perceive there when you're feeling the back of your pelvis. That's just one part of a structure that's three-dimensional, right? It goes from the back, wraps around the side to the front, and also has a bottom and has a top. So where you might be able to feel or sense your tailbone and your pubic bone, that's also part of your pelvis. And where you have the two little bony protrusions in the front, in the bottom of your belly, that's part of your pelvis. And so see how that shows up in your sensing of yourself. And then bring your breathing, if you can, down there below your belly button, as though you're breathing into your pelvis, and see what that feels like. Does anything else change when you start bringing your breathing super low like that? Okay, now shift your attention up to your shoulders and notice the way that your right shoulder is resting on the floor. And see if you can sense again the shape of your shoulder. You have your shoulder blade in the back that branches out to the side of your shoulder that connects to your collarbone in the front. So again, there's a front and a back part of your shoulder, right? There's a top and a bottom part of your shoulder, base of your neck, and then down toward your mid back. And then compare that to your left shoulder. See if you can notice any differences. So in front of the back of your pelvis, you have your low belly. And in front of the back of your shoulders, you have your upper chest. So now see what it feels like to direct your breathing way up there at the front of your upper chest, in front of your shoulders, in front of your shoulder blades, let's say. And see how that's different for you. Now play with it a little bit and notice, does anything change in the way that you feel your whole back, depending on if you're breathing low down or if you're breathing high up? Which way of breathing feels more accommodating or more familiar to you? Maybe neither. And if you can, zero in on the part of your back between where your rib cage stops and where your pelvis begins, or your pelvis stops. So between the top of your pelvis and the bottom of your ribs in the back, can you feel that part of your back? And can you sense what's in front of that part of your back? What part of your abdomen is that? And then play with that for a second. Take that part of your abdomen in your attention and play with breathing there. And you could expand a little bit, you could contract a little bit, and just listen. Listen for if there's any changes in the feeling of your pelvis or your shoulders or that curve of your low back when you breathe there. And now feel the weight of your head on the floor. And see, what do you notice about your tongue right now? Could it be that there's a slight difference in how the back of your tongue feels, depending on where you're breathing? And then leave that and notice your two legs, whether they're straight or your feet are standing, and see if there's any kind of difference you notice between the position of each leg or foot if your feet are standing. And there might be a difference in weight or position, but it might also just be something like clarity. Do you somehow see one of your legs clearer than the other one? And, you know, I should say again, for the sake of the recording, you guys here know, I ask these questions not because we're searching for an answer, but because the questions elicit a certain kind of thinking, certain kind of awareness. There's no right answer. And then finally look or sense your arms and see, is there any difference in the way that each of your arms is connecting to your shoulder joint? You can notice, did you choose to have your hands palms facing up or down or to the side? And then if you have room, which I realize we're gonna have to negotiate again here a little bit, bring your arms out to the left and the right in line with your shoulders. I'll adjust where I am a little bit. And if you can't, if there's no room to have your arms out, then you can keep them by your sides, but yeah. Now have your palms facing upwards, and you can even just peek over where you put your arms and see, are they actually in line with your shoulders or not? Don't worry about me, you got room. And then bend your right knee slowly and unbend it. So your two legs are straight. And if your 2 feet are already standing, then just start to bend and unbend your right knee so that your right leg is straight. And then you bend your right knee and you can gradually bring your right foot up to standing. And as you're exploring what that movement feels like, check those places we've been talking about. So see, does anything change in the way that you feel the back of your pelvis, your low back, or your shoulders when you're bending and unbending your right leg? And what's always interesting, whether you're just starting Feldenkrais, you've been doing it forever, is to play with the speed that you're going at, because what we're doing is an awareness game. So you can find out for yourself, how does your awareness change of what you're doing depending on the speed that you're doing it. Then leave your right leg straight and try that a few times with your left leg. Bend and unbend your left knee. Drag your left heel along the floor. Do it a few times and maybe then bring your left foot to standing and then re-straighten your leg. And again, just play with it a little bit. There's actually many ways that you can do this movement. And so see, what do you choose? What's your pathway for your knee? Do you tend to bring your knee out to the side? Do you tend to keep your knee straight toward the ceiling? What do you do? Can you tell the difference between how you do it on the right and the left? Or maybe it's the same for you. Okay, and then leave your 2 legs straight for a moment and sense the way that you're making contact overall with the floor, the kind of impression that you're making or would be making into a soft surface on the floor. And then again, bend just your right knee and drag your foot until your foot can stand. So your left leg is long and your right foot is standing. And now start to do a movement of tilting your right knee a little bit to the right and a little bit to the left. And what else are you doing while you're tilting your knee? Now listen for the back of your pelvis again. And if you don't feel any kind of pressure change in the back of your pelvis, then move your knee in such a way that you feel your pelvis kind of rolls slightly, right? So the pressure will change across the back of your pelvis to some degree. And notice what that feels like, particularly around your low back, between your pelvis and the bottom of your ribs, top of your pelvis, bottom of your ribs. And then is it possible to do the movement of your knee without moving your pelvis like that? Could your pelvis stay quiet And if not, so to what degree can your pelvis stay quiet without fixing it or holding it stiff, right? But how small or delicate a movement would you have to do with your knee so that your pelvis could stay quite quiet? And again, you can always play, we know whatever these contrasts I make, you can play with it, right? What's the difference for you? The feeling of doing a movement with your leg that also moves your pelvis, or the feeling of doing the movement with your leg that doesn't move your pelvis? What changes for you? And get curious about what that difference is. And then just slide your right leg straight and pause for a second. And notice the way that your two legs are resting on the floor. And then rebend that same right knee again, drag that right foot back up to standing. Now start doing a movement of tilting your right knee to the left and come back. Okay. Now pause and do a movement of pressing into your right foot and release. Just pressing into your right foot. Now, some of you might be able to get a sense that when you're pressing into your right foot, it's almost as though your knee is lengthening away from you. And it might depend on where your foot is. And of course, you can always reassess wherever you've placed your foot. You can always check for different coordination possibilities. Now, what you're going to see if you can do is to basically combine those two things. Okay, just hang on a sec. So you're going to tilt your right knee to the left and then lengthen your knee. Your foot stays on the floor, but you'll press into the floor a little bit with your foot, just gently though, still, right? And especially if it's complicated or you have any strong feelings, do much less. Make it so delicate, much less than your full range of motion. So that first you tilt and then you lengthen just a little bit. Now add to that, as you're tilting your right knee to the left and lengthening your knee a little bit, turn your head to the right. So something interesting is starting to happen, right? You're doing a movement at the bottom of your spine. Your spine is down there, wedged between the two halves of your pelvis, right? Top of your spine is way up there, attached to the back of your skull. And you're asking the bottom of your spine to go one way and the top of your spine to go another way. So what happens in the middle part? Are you breathing? Okay, give it a little rest. Bring your leg down, bring your arms down. Feel the contact that you're making with the floor again. I had a new client come yesterday for FI, and at some point we're doing something, and I said, you know, do you notice any difference there between this and that? And she said, well, yeah, I mean, I noticed, but it's really subtle. And I said, oh, good. Then we're doing Feldenkrais. Okay, so bend your right knee again. same foot, same knee. Bring your arms out to the sides, shoulder height, palms facing up. Now, a few times, let's have you do it on your inhale. This is not the right way to breathe or the right way to coordinate. It's just one way that we're going to look at this. So inhale and bring your breathing down below your belly button, down into your pelvis, and try to fill your low belly. And see if you can sense any kind of effect that has on your back, on your pelvis, maybe on your tailbone. You breathe in, expand below your belly button, right? Almost like you're going to expand onto your pubic bone. And then actually, yeah, let's have it so when you breathe out, do the opposites. When you breathe out, pull that lowest part of your belly back a little bit. Press the lowest part of your belly forward a little bit. Just the low, low, low part. And then pull it back. And again, I mean, I know sometimes it's frustrating. If it's hard to do, we want to do it harder, right? So catch yourself if you have that tendency and just see what happens if you actually do less. You can always literally just imagine doing it. Okay, and then we're going to combine the other pieces with this so that you'll press lightly into your right foot, tilt your knee to the left and lengthen it, turn your head to the right as you're pressing your belly lightly forward. And then let that all go. Also let your belly go when you come back. Don't pull your belly back this time. Press your low belly forward as you're turning your pelvis and turning your head. And then let that go and come back. Make sure you're not going to your max, right? It doesn't matter how far you can do the movement. What we're trying to work on here is feeling differences. So you'll probably get more information if you do less. Okay, and now you're going to do the opposite. So come back, right foot is still standing, but now just start to tilt your right knee a little bit to the right and come back. And listen for the point that it starts, you start to feel a stretch and stop there. So whatever that range of motion might be for you, for your flexibility. And then again, join in with your head turning opposite to your knee. And your air going into your low belly. It's almost like your pubic bone, your belly is going to move your pubic bone in the direction of your right knee. So what happens to your middle and upper back? When your knee goes out to the right? And then let that go. Bring your parts down again for a second. Give your brain a little rest. Check in with yourself. Notice what it's like to pay attention in this way. I always think of Feldenkrais designing these lessons long before the internet, long before we had the attention span of a flea, and how differently this practice was at some point, probably. And then arguably how much more important it, I don't know, more important, but certainly deeply important it is now. All right. So yeah, one more time, bend your right knee, stand your right foot again. Bring your arms out to the right and left, have your palms facing upward. So this time, actually no, lengthen out, bring yourself down for a second. Let me just take one small side step here. So bring your arms down, bring your legs down, and feel your contact in this position, right? See the way that you're positioned on the floor, okay? Now, with your right leg straight as it is, do a movement of rotating your whole leg a little bit right and a little bit left. And you might notice that it seems like it's easier or smoother in one direction or the other. Now take your right hand and put it on the side of your right hip. Right on the side of your upper thigh, side of your right hip. And you'll know where to put it in a moment. So as you're turning your right leg, see if you can feel with your hand any kind of response along the side of you, toward your bum on the right. Listen, kind of, let's call it the side of your bum on the right. So we don't really feel our hip joint, but we definitely get some indicator of our hip joint. And see if you can actually distinguish the difference between rotating your leg like that so that your pelvis, the structure of your pelvis is quiet versus the right side of your pelvis kind of lifts or moves a bit on the floor. Can you tell the difference between those two possibilities? And then try it with your left. Your left might be totally different from the right. So turn your left leg in and out. And of course, we haven't talked to the left leg at all yet. And feel your outer left buttock area, thigh, hip. And distinguish on this side. Can you do the movement of your leg that isn't a movement of your hips or not? Then if you were to really turn your leg in, for example, could you imagine how that could become a movement of your back? Don't do this, right? This is not that kind of lesson. You're not going to start rolling around on the floor, but see if you can even imagine for yourself that if you turned, let's even say if you rotated your two legs to the right, eventually that would turn your pelvis and it would turn your back. Yeah, see if you can just imagine what I'm talking about there. And then don't do that, just do a movement of your leg, right? That's not part of your torso. Okay. So hip joints, that's where the action happens for your legs. Pelvic bones, for the most part, are stabilizers and negotiators between your legs and your spine. And this organization is something that gets very precarious. I would really say for everybody, except maybe like elite athletes or something, or dancers, maybe even still. So now leave that, bend your right knee, stand your right foot again, bring your arms out to the right and the left with your palms facing up. And what I want you to start to listen for is to distinguish between what is the action happening of your thigh bone in the joint, in the hip joint, in the socket, and what is the action of your pelvis turning, your pelvic bones, and what is the action of your spine turning, like a spinal twist. Okay, so take your right hand and put it on the crease between your leg and your body, like your bikini line or whatever, like where your underwear line would go between your leg and your leg and your torso. Now, if you can, with your fingertips, you might be able to feel your pubic bone. And then with the heel of your hand, depends the size of your body and your hand, but you might more or less feel where your front hip bone is, okay? So basically you want to span that distance as much as you can between your pubic bone and your hip bone. And now I want you to see what it feels like to actually initiate movement from there. You can still use your foot, right? But as you're tilting your right knee a little bit to the left and lengthening it, feel what it feels like to initiate from where your hand is. Yeah, some of you are pressing your abdomen a little bit into your hand. Brilliant. That's a nice, yeah, nice to bring that back in. And why do I say that? We'll find out. Why is that brilliant? Why does that change things? How does that change things? Okay, then try your knee the other direction. Try your right knee to the right. Keep your hand there on your groin area. Now this time when your knee's going to the right, go to before you stretch. And then see what happens if you kind of slide where your hand is. Keep your hand where it is, but slide that part of yourself so that your pelvis turns a little bit more to the right. Your belly is still chasing your right knee to the right. And you might find that your right knee goes more to the floor without stretching it to the floor. I'll say that again. So bring your foot back up to standing. Start to bring your right knee out to the right until it's before it stretches. Don't stretch it. But then see what happens if where your hand is, if you turn your pelvic bones to the right, your belly button and your pubic bone to the right, so that it's almost like your right leg is being, it's like a, what do they call that? Like a drawbridge. It's like your right leg is being lowered a bit to the floor and then come back up to a standing foot. So go to the place that it would be a stretch and stop, and then feel what it feels like to turn your pelvis. And actually, you know what? Put your left hand on your left hip bone. And then you could even use your hands a little bit. You could FI yourself a little bit here. So turn your hip bones to follow your inner right knee. That's right. And then try it again a few times to the left. Turn your knee, tilt your knee to the left and elongate it. And now just do it to the left. What happens to your right hand? Your right hand is still on your right hip bone, right leg crease. When your right knee goes to the left and you lengthen it, what happens to that right hip bone relative to your left hip bone? Are you secretly accidentally holding in your abdomen or holding in your chest? Some of you look like you could do well to lengthen your tongue out of your mouth and open the back of your throat. Some of you look like you're holding a lot of shit, with all due respect. So what are you holding on to, my dears? What are you holding on to? Okay, let it go. Take another little rest. Of course, if you need to change your position, if you're uncomfortable in your back, roll on your side, do whatever you got to do so that you can stay in the game. Or if you're out of the game, then just rest on the floor and enjoy a little nap. This is a simple lesson and not complex, and yet certainly not a basic lesson at all, right? There's a lot of very interesting, complicated relationships happening. So if it's too much for you to kind of hold on to those details, then you just feel the feeling and see if you can just enjoy the feeling and kind of do what you can of the instructions. Don't get overwhelmed with the details of the instructions. Right? Okay, so bring your arms out to left and right and stand, keep your right leg long, stand your left foot. So first, just see what's your range of motion in your hip joint on this side. Do a tilting of your left knee so that your pelvis doesn't move without fixing your pelvis. And again, play with that a little bit, right? How tiny and delicate a movement of your knee is necessary in order for your belly to be full and soft, your back to be relaxed, throat to be relaxed. And maybe nothing, right? Maybe you're not there yet. So you just see what you can do. Now actually put your two hands on your front hip bones again. Actually, no, put your right hand in the small of your back on the right side. If you can do that with your shoulder. You could have your palm up, your palm down. And if your right hand doesn't fit underneath your low back, if that's too weird for your shoulder, then just keep your arm out to the side where it was. So your left hand is on your left hip bone in the front. Your right hand is underneath the small of your back. And if you can, feel where the top of the back of your pelvis is on the right with your right hand. Now start to tilt your left knee to the right. And lengthen it. Your left hand is on the front of the left side of your pelvis. Your right hand is on the top back of the right side of your pelvis. And as you tilt your knee to the right and you lengthen it, what happens between your two hands? How does your pelvis change its position? How does the right side of your pelvis change its position relative to the left side of your pelvis? Okay. Now just come back to neutral for a second. Keep your left foot standing. Bring your arms out to the left and right, palms facing up. And tilt your left knee out to the left to the point just before stretching, and then come back. Add your belly into that. Imagine like there's let's say like an elastic band between your pubic bone and your inner left knee. And so your inner left knee is going to kind of pull your pubic bone forward and down, and your belly is going to fill up the space behind your pubic bone. That's it. That's it. And again, if it's hard, right, don't try to do it better. Back off till the place that's like, oh yeah, I think maybe I know what you're talking about. And maybe you just don't. Maybe you're like, I don't know what that means. Okay, so that instruction you don't get, fine, you keep going. Notice your foot, right? Notice how you shift your weight on your foot. So it's not a movement of the strength of your back or your belly. It's being initiated by your knee tilting and your foot tilting. And you're feeling gravity, right? You're feeling the weight of your left thigh bone sinking toward the floor. And the way you can gradually start to look at is when you get to the point of stretch, is there any space for your pelvic bones to turn a little bit to the left? Not your back, your pelvic bones. That might ask something of your right leg, the one that's straight. Pause with that for a moment. Return to the previous instruction. So tilt your left knee to the right and lengthen it. Turn your head to the left. Your knee goes to the right and your head goes to the left. Your belly. You could even, you know what, a few times, maybe you all could do well to exaggerate it a little bit. Kind of like a real bearing down, pushing out your pee kind of feeling when you're turning your pelvis. Just feel what that feels like. I mean, I know for myself, when I do this kind of work, I immediately am like, nope, not supposed to do that with my back. Nope. So if you get any like, oh, that's weird or wrong or whatever, don't do anything that's painful, but also just notice if there's any kind of blockage that, I don't know, maybe you have not the same neurosis that I do. Hopefully you don't. But anyway, just see if you're still open to possibilities or if you're kind of like just doing the same thing over and over again. All right, and then bring your knee again a few times to the left and back and turn your head to the right as you're doing that. And you can go back and forth now, right? And if you're curious, you know, it could be interesting. What if you were to hold on to, let's say, however the configuration is for you, somehow hold on to the bottom of your rib cage in the front and the back. One hand's in the front, one hand's in the back. You're like holding yourself, holding your own rib cage at the bottom, right? Now you're going to be tilting your leg left and right, still slowly. If you feel like you're doing it fast, it might be that you're burned out. You just don't want to keep paying attention, which is fine. So just rest. And if you feel like you can keep going at a pace that you can pay attention, then see if you can start to clarify that your rib basket and the beginning of the arch of your lumbar can more or less be quiet, even if it means the movement has to be very tiny, right? So play with it a little bit. Can your low abdomen be free, your pelvis be free, but your low back and your low ribs mostly quiet? Katie's cat is going for a full nap right on her chest. That's hilarious. Okay, so take a rest, bring your legs down, bring your arms down. See what you notice about yourself now. And just briefly revisit the feeling of breathing low, like what we did at the beginning. Breathe as though you're breathing down into your pelvis. And feel what that's like at this point. And do a comparison, see what it feels like when you feel up high in front of your shoulder blades, the top of your chest. And then see if you can determine where is breathing in front of the curve of your low back. What part of you is that? Bend both your knees and stand both your feet. Bring your arms out to the left and the right, shoulder height, palms facing up. Do just a little teeny movement of your right knee left and right. See how that's coming along. See if that's changing at all, that feeling in your hip joint. And then leave the right guy and try the left guy out a little bit. Just a little tiny itty bitty tilting of the left knee left and right. See what that's like. See if you notice the difference left and right. Okay. Now go back to your right knee. Keep your left foot standing. Your left knee is looking at the ceiling for now. Okay. Bring your right knee out to the right. Press your low abdomen a little bit forward and see if your right knee can start to lower a little bit more toward the floor. Don't go to the point of stretching. And then when your knee goes as much as it can before stretching, tilt your left knee to the right and lengthen it. And notice how your right knee will go more to the floor. Now stay with me, stay with me. Keep hanging out with your right knee, but bring your left knee back upright. And then do that again. So your right knee stays where it is, not to the point of stretching. Your left knee is going to tilt to the right and lengthen, and then come back. Your right knee stays heavy but comfortable out to the right as your left knee tilts to the right and lengthens and comes back. So your right knee does not come back up, your right knee stays. And that's why you might have to play with it a little bit, right? Play with your range of motion. What is it for you? Where's the place that your right leg can stay quiet while you're doing this movement of your left leg? Is there that place? Are you tightening your abdomen or holding your breath? Right? Remember these tools that we're looking at. Yeah, see what's possible for you. That's it. Now, the next time that you have your left knee back upright, also bring your right knee back upright. Keep your right knee upright as you tilt your left knee to the left. And then when your left knee can't go anymore without stretching, start to tilt your right knee to the left and lengthen it. And then come back home with your right knee, but keep your left knee quiet. Left knee more or less stays where it is in the socket, right? Not stretching your inner thighs, even though that might be satisfying. And you're listening to how your right knee is essentially changing the position of your pelvis. You're moving in your right hip joint so that the position of your pelvis is being changed, which changes the position of your left knee. And then when your right thigh bone comes back home, right hip joint comes back home, pelvis comes back home, but the left hip joint stays neutral. Next time your right knee is upright, bring your left knee upright and pause for a moment with your 2 feet standing. And then we're going to start to play with it a little bit. And if you're cooked, you're cooked. Try not to just race ahead into the end of the story, right? Try to just stay aware of what you're doing, okay? So tilt your right knee out to the right. Until it's at the place it can go without stretching. Then tilt your left knee to the right and lengthen it. And maybe you can keep going a little bit with your left knee. Right? Maybe the whole outer edge of your right foot is on the floor. Maybe your outer right thigh is on the floor. Then bring your left knee back upright. But listen, keep your right leg quiet as your left knee goes to the left. Left knee goes to the left. And then your right foot will end up standing. So your left knee is out to the left and your right foot is standing until your right knee also goes to the left and lengthens to the left. Your outer left foot is on the floor. Maybe your outer left buttock or thigh is on the floor. Keep your left leg quiet. Bring your right knee back home. Bring your right knee out to the right. Keep going with your right knee to the right until your left foot comes up to standing. Listen to the timing of it. Listen to the timing, right? That's why I said, don't get to like the action. What's the coordination? Listen to what you're doing. Right now, when your right leg is on the floor or close, as much as is comfortable for you, you can let your left knee keep going a little bit to the right. You can lengthen it. That's going to pull the left side of your pelvis forward and up, right? And then come back home with your left knee. Keep going to the left with your left knee. Keep going to the left until your right foot is standing. Once your right foot is standing, lengthen your right knee over there to the left. Take your time, take your time. Use your low belly. Be willing to allow your pelvic bones to not just rotate, but to move relative to one another on their hip joint. Trying to squeeze your buttocks, right? If you're squeezing your buttock, you've gone too far. Stay in the creamy zone. Smooth, easy. Yeah, and I can see it happening with a couple of you, is that something kind of spontaneous starts happening. It's almost like there's an elastic band between your two knees, and suddenly the way that you're using your effort might start to change a little bit. Check on your back ribs, right? If you notice that your back ribs are being pulled away from the floor, try doing less with your legs. Try doing more with your low belly, free. And then what happens to your head? Some of you are noticing that your head kind of nods a little bit, right? Your spine is being tractioned a little bit. All right, you are cooked. Lengthen out your legs. Enjoy the feeling of resting on the floor. See if you notice any differences. And notice how the back of your pelvis is touching the floor now. The way that you see the shape of it. And then feel your two shoulders. And get a sense of the shape between your shoulder and your pelvis on the right. Shoulder and pelvis on the left. And then rest as long as you feel like you need to. And when you are ready to get up, make sure that you do it slowly and carefully. And some things that you can listen for when you're standing a bit, walking around, is notice where your vision is, where your gaze is, and the way that your feet feel under you. Just take your time observing a little bit. I'll leave you on your own to have your time to integrate here. And thanks for being here. See you next time.